Alright, we're going to get into Photoshop as it was intended. Before this, we've been using Photoshop kind of for creative purposes, and Photoshop was actually created to sort of help correct and edit photos that were poorly taken or needed some corrections or slight corrections. So you're going to learn the basic Photoshop correction techniques. I'm not going to list them off here, but essentially you'll take photos from your previous series of photos. Any of the projects you've taken photos for prior to this, you can use any of those photos. I don't care. If you don't have any of those photos with you on your computer, then I will provide you with some photos. There's a folder in the project folder that contains some photos that you can use. When you're all done, I want you to hand in a before and after photo of each correction in a PowerPoint. If you're choosing your own photos, try to choose photos that would benefit from the correction you are using. Some corrections in here, there really is no benefit to them, but some of them, like, shadow highlight, you may want to find a dark kind of underexposed photo and then use that shadow highlight command to sort of help it look a little bit better. So try to do that if you can. Again, here's a list of the corrections. Most of these corrections don't take very long, and again, you have to, when you hand it in, show before and after. Here's the worksheet where you can record which photos you need to use for which corrections. I'll print these out for you. They're also contained in the project folder in case you lose track of what you're supposed to do. And this is just kind of a warning here. Please, if you're going to edit original photos, save a copy of the original somewhere else so that you don't accidentally override the original files. I know this sounds overly cautious, but if you're not careful, you will ruin the original or make edits to it that you did not intend to make, and then you won't have your original photo file there. And unlike hard copies, the digital file is kind of all you have. So unless you have it backed up on your camera or backed up to another computer, make sure you make copies on your computer if you don't want to overwrite your originals. There is also, if you want a tutorial, I'm going to quick demonstrate some of these techniques, but if you're tired of my videos and my voice, I can understand that. The tutorial will walk you through all of these corrections, and some of these corrections are literally 1 to 2 steps. They're very easy. So on to Photoshop. Now I'm going to walk you through the basic Photoshop corrections that you need to learn for this project. From time to time I'll probably refer to the tutorial just to remember which corrections I'm going to show you. I remember how to do all the corrections, and sometimes I'll just forget which one's next. If you don't like this video, of course you can always follow the tutorial. I'll try to stick to the tutorial as best I can and sort of give you the same information. Right now I'm just going to work on some of the chalk walk photos from this here. So our first thing to do is resolution. The resolution of a file has to do with its dimensions and how many pixels there are per inch. If you look at this photo, it's a group photo, and if I zoom in, you can see individual details of the faces, but at a certain point it just sort of gets a little grainy, okay? And that's because the resolution kind of runs out, like you just don't have enough information there. Let's check the resolution for this image. Image size will bring us the actual image size, and the resolution for this image is 180 pixels per inch, and the actual image is 2,000 some odd pixels by about 1,700 pixels, and in actuality it's 15 by 9 inches, so that's a pretty big image. To reduce the size of this image or change the resolution, we can actually turn down the resolution if we want using the slider here, or I can enter a number. A common resolution is 72. At 72 pixels per inch, you'll notice that the width and the height total number goes way down, and before we had a 13 megabyte picture and now we have a 2 megabyte picture. So if I click OK, you'll notice my image will shrink automatically. But if we zoom way in here and zoom back into that previous spot, you'll notice it's very, very pixelated now. We removed a lot of the information. There are less pixels to display our photo here. Now the advantage of this is the file itself is actually smaller. This is easier to upload. This is easier to share via email. A lot of those have upload and download restrictions, so 13 megabytes is rather large. You might want to reduce the size of a photo that you're trying to upload or share easily with someone. Alright, the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is canvas size. You just have to increase the canvas size of an image. So to do that, you go Image and then Canvas Size, and then you can increase it in any direction you want. Let's say I want to add some extra canvas on top. So to do that, I'm going to weight my anchor here down so that I have extra canvas up top. Okay, and then I'll add inches in height. So it's at 9.6 inches. Let's make it 12. Okay, that'll increase the file size and the actual dimensions of the photo as well. So when we click OK, it'll extend the canvas. Now one last thing, before you extend it, sometimes you want to think about what your colors are going to be extended to. They have the defaults here, white, gray, black. You can pick other and choose your own color, or use the current foreground or background color. And we don't want to do that, so we're just going to pick white, then click OK, and your canvas will extend. Now up here I could put whatever I want. I could put words, I have room to put maybe another image. Doesn't really matter. Extending your canvas is kind of a helpful thing. Another way to do it also is to use your crop tool. If you take your crop tool and crop your image the full dimensions of your image, and then pull the crop tool out past your image and then double click, you will fill that with extra pixels. And it will typically fill with your foreground color, so be aware of that when you do that. Alright, the next adjustment I'm going to show you how to do is, again, pretty simple. You're going to use the crop tool to crop an image. To use the crop tool, just click on it, and then you'll notice your options bar will change, and you'll have this special tool. So if you click and drag with it, it'll crop to your dimensions. Now CS6 actually has a different crop tool, and it's a little bit updated and a little bit different than the one I'm using. When you're happy with it, you can commit the crop, but let's say you want to make sure it's a specific size. Again, there are boxes for entering the width and the height. If I want it to be, let's say, 10 by 20 inches, and I start to crop, notice it will only conform to those dimensions. Let's switch that around. To switch them, there's a little go-between arrow in between those two, and that'll flip your dimensions. So now let's try it. Okay, that's much better. Alright, and again, when you're happy with it, just double click or hit the check mark to commit your crop. Okay, the next thing we're going to show you is how to do an adjustment layer with curves. To create a new adjustment layer, go to your layers palette, and then the adjustment layer button is in the middle. It is a circle that's half black and half white. Just click on that and then click on the curves option. Now to use the curves panel to the fullest potential of this tool, you kind of have to play around with it. What I recommend you do first for just loose adjustments is keep it as is, maybe update your histogram, and then click on this button up here. This is the click and drag to in image to modify the curve button, and what it allows you to do if you use it is turn up or turn down certain parts of your image. So if I want to turn up these areas to make them lighter, I just click and drag up. If I want to make them darker, I just click and drag down. Okay. If I want to make her lighter, she has a lot of dark areas, lots of shadows. So if I want to lighten that up, I just turn that up. And then that area of the histogram will go up. Notice that's the darkest colors in the image, so it's at the end of the histogram spectrum. And we lose kind of our true blacks. If we try to go in there and adjust this down, it doesn't quite give us the subtlety we need. Let's say we want to lighten just the blue in this image. Chances are the blue is pretty heavy towards the dark spectrum. To do that, you're going to switch to the blue channel. Now, the way these channels are set up is dependent upon how the image, or what color mode the image is in, and color mode the image is in is right up here. So image mode, and right now it's set to RGB color, which is common for computer displays. If it's in any other setting, you'll see different channel options. So let's go to the blue channel, and you'll notice the histogram goes back to being straight again. We haven't actually adjusted the blue yet. We just adjusted the master combination of all three. Okay, so let's go to the blue one, and then I'm still using the slider here, and I'm gonna turn this up, turn that down, maybe turn up the sleeves here just a bit, maybe turn up some of the blues in here, and you'll see my curve is starting to get way more complex here. It's starting to look a little greenish and yellow too, so we can go to the other channels here and make individual adjustments to these. So like if we want to turn up the red, and then turn down the pigmentation in her skin, or turn down the color in the bricks, we can see what area that affects and see how that affects our image. The more you tweak with this and sort of play with it, the more vibrant your colors can get, and the more just alive your photos can be. Curves is an extremely powerful command that can do an awful lot for a photo that doesn't quite look right. So really play around with it. Just have fun. Levels is the next thing I'm going to show you how to use. To create a levels adjustment layer, you can click this button at the bottom of your layers panel, or you can go to the adjustment panel. If you don't see the adjustment panel, go to window adjustments to turn it on. In the adjustment panel, levels is the second option. If you click on it, this will open up. It'll show you your histogram. Again, that's the distribution of light and dark values within your image. I can move my sliders around. I can change the location of my gray slider here. Notice I get a much darker image there, and I can move my true black slider in a little bit, but we're kind of losing this student right here, so let's probably not adjust that too much. You can adjust individual channels with levels as well, although it doesn't give you as much flexibility as it does with curves. So that turns it up a little warm there. If we move that around, we get some green tones. Just play around with the levels panel. It's not quite as powerful as curves, but it can still make some basic adjustments to photos that are worthwhile. Okay, the next thing we're going to show you how to use is a layer mask, and a layer mask allows you to combine two images easily. First things first, you got to make a selection. Often it's easiest to make a selection from the layers panel, so if you have an image that you want to move to another image, you first have to make a selection. So let's double click on this background here to make it a layer, and then to make a selection of all the pixels in that layer, just hold down the control key and click on the layer thumbnail. You'll notice your cursor will change to a finger with a little dotted line box, and that'll allow you to select all the pixels on there. So even if you have pixels erased, it will put the marching ants around that area. When you're ready, hit Control C to copy, and then go to your other image and hit Control V to paste. Now this image is the same size as the other one, but we're going to use a layer mask to kind of combine the two. To create a layer mask, it's easy. Go to the bottom of your layers panel, and there's a little button that says Add Layer Mask if you hover over it. It's a picture of a rectangle with a circle in the middle of it. Click that button and you'll add your mask. Now to mask out certain areas, you're going to paint with your paintbrush, and you're going to paint with black and white. Right now, got my paintbrush equipped. Just click on it in your toolbox or hit B on the keyboard. I can use my bracket keys to make the brush larger or smaller. I can use shift bracket keys to make it softer or harder. There's a bunch of brush presets, blending modes, opacity, all up here. Make sure your opacity is 100%, and then what you're going to do is you're going to paint with black. And what that'll do is that'll paint the image behind this one into the scene. So I can add these people back in, and I'm not doing a very accurate job obviously because I'm just playing around here, but If you want, you can combine two images that would go well together. Alright. Again, I'm not going to spend the time to clean this up, but you know, obviously you'd zoom in, change the size of your brush, change the settings, and sort of carefully paint or mask away certain parts of it so that it actually fit. Alright, the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is to adjust for lack of flash. Let's pretend this photo is got a terrible exposure here, and our subject is just too dark. There wasn't a flash for this, and David here is kind of hunched over in shadow, so he's obviously dark for that reason. But let's just pretend we want to lighten this up. To do that, I would make an adjustment layer that is obviously maybe you could try levels, you could try brightness and contrast, doesn't matter. I'm going to try brightness and contrast, and I'm going to turn up the brightness. Okay. Now he's getting a lot brighter, and you're kind of losing the shadow. But what we can do is we can keep him nice and bright, and then mask out the remaining areas so that it looks like a normal photo. When you create a new adjustment layer, you'll automatically have a layer mask attached to it. Again, to paint on a mask, you just switch to your brush tool and use black to paint the areas of the photo that you want to stay normal back into the photo. Now, I'm not going to sit here and paint the perfect mask, but as you can tell, as I paint here, it goes back to the normal setting. Alright, if I make the brush bigger here, I can include all of this. Alright, there we go. Now, as a result, David's a little bit lighter, but the surrounding area looks normal as well, like you would in a correctly exposed photo. Do this with a photo that you know has too dark a setup. You can't quite see the subject, or you turn the flash on but didn't mean to. This is an easy way to correct for that. Alright, the next thing I'm going to show you is brightness and contrast. If you don't already know how to make an adjustment layer, go to the adjustment panel. To open the adjustment panel, if you don't see it, go to Window and Adjustments to open that up. Okay? Once it's open, the first option is actually brightness and contrast. So if you click on that option, you're going to have two sliders. This will allow you to adjust the brightness and contrast. If you add brightness, that'll make your object or your subject lighter and your photo lighter. If you subtract, it'll make it darker. Now, this is kind of damaging to the photo, so you don't want to do this too heavily. It's kind of a last-ditch effort type of thing. You can also use the contrast slider as well, but again, it's pretty egregious. Okay. Try to avoid this if you can, but if you have no other resort, this will for sure lighten your subject. It just sort of gets rid of some of the data sometimes. So play around with it and kind of be wary. That's kind of why I'm using an adjustment layer for it, so I don't damage my original photo. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is the shadow highlight command. I don't believe it's an adjustment layer. Looks like it isn't. So what you're going to have to actually do is do an actual adjustment to the pixels. Before we do that, we're going to protect these pixels and copy this image to another layer. So I'm going to double click on that background layer to make it a layer, and then I'm going to drag it down to the new layer button to make a copy of it. The reason for this is because I want to have my original pixels there in case I ever need them again, or I don't like how it turns out and I lose my history. So I'm going to turn that copy off, put it at the bottom, and we're going to click on the layer we want to work on, and then we're going to go Image, Adjustments, and then towards the bottom is the Shadow Highlights command. This is part of a group of commands that are very powerful and brand new. They do a lot of really cool things to adjust photos. Let's just play around with shadow highlights. You can come back and mess with the others. When this pops up, it's going to look pretty intimidating. Just play around with it. You don't necessarily need to know what everything affects. Just gain an understanding through use. Shadows, again, is the darker range of tones. You can adjust that by just sort of playing here with your sliders. The amount seems to affect the darkness of it. For the highlights here, it's extremely high. So we're going to turn that way down. We're going to increase the width of that effect. Radius, I have no idea what that affects, so you're going to have to look that up. Change the color here. Don't need to do that. Again, I'm just playing. I don't have a mastery over every single one of these tools as well. And it seems to be actually making this look really well. We can start to see the sidewalk now, and she's not as lost in shadow. So this is actually turning out really well. When you're happy with it, click OK. And again, you have your original as well. So if you ever do hate your adjustments, go back in your history. Or if you lose your history, just use your original here. Let's take a look at the difference between the two. Yeah, it's a really big difference. Cool, huh? Alright, the next thing I'm going to show you how to use is the color replacement tool. So here we have a picture of a student, and we're going to replace the color of her shirt with a different color. So to use the color replacement tool, I believe it's under the brush tool. So click and hold on the brush tool and then release over the color replacement tool. You'll notice your brush cursor is going to be a little bit different. It'll be a circle with a crosshair in the middle of it. Now you can use the bracket keys to make it larger or smaller, but I recommend you keep it kind of smallish. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pick some colors to switch here. The first option available to you is to do continuous sampling. And what this will do is it will sample based on where your crosshair is, and it will change that color underneath that sample. Now the tolerance affects how much of that color it changes. So the higher the tolerance, I believe, the more color it will change. The lower the tolerance, the less it will change. So I'm just going to turn it down here to about 30% and see what that does. You have other modes as well. If you want to change the hue or the saturation, you can try out those modes. And I'm actually going to change my shirt to, let's choose a fuchsia pink here. Alright, so if I paint with this, it should change the blue to a pink wherever my crosshair is over. Notice, not everything inside of my circle changes color. Only stuff that the crosshair touches. Okay? And it looks like 30 is enough tolerance here to just change the blue here. Now the advantage of this is that it's pretty easy to use. You don't have to do anything else. You just start painting and start changing the color. If I mess up, it's because my cursor is going into areas that it shouldn't go into, like her face. So you kind of have to be careful with this. If you have a very complex color to replace, I'll show you how to do that real quick here. Let's pretend we want to change the blue here and it's just too hard to select. What we're going to do is we're going to sample that color. So I'm going to switch my fuchsia to the background color here, and then for my foreground color I'm going to use the Alt key to switch to my eyedropper tool and sample the blue of the shirt. Okay, so now the blue of the shirt is one of my foreground background swatches. It's the foreground swatch now. I need to set it to my background swatch, and then I need to switch my color replacement tool to the sampling background swatch mode. Once you do this, it will only sample and change colors that fit this blue in the background swatch, no matter where I paint. So let's try it again. Works pretty humpty-dory there. Anything within that range of blue, it will change, obviously. If I get out of that range of blue, obviously it won't change it. So like this dark blue here, it's not going to change it. It's just changing the light blue. Okay? So that's kind of the advantage to that. If you want more control and you kind of have trouble like painting a different color. Now of course the tolerance will affect that, and then what color you sample will affect that. If you have picked a more medium range blue, it might have affected the light blue and the dark blue. Just experiment with it. Alright, the next tool I'm going to show you how to use is the Dodge and Burn tool. And I believe in the tutorial I walk you through both ways of doing it. You can use either way, doesn't really matter. Show you the first way. The first way is what I consider kind of the destructive way. So double click on your background layer to make it a layer. And then any dodge and burn you make to this layer will actually affect the pixels. So it's destructive. It's actually changing the pixel color and the pixel information. So to kind of prevent yourself from losing the original file, make sure you click and drag that layer listing in your layer panel down to the new layer button to make a copy. And then hide that copy so that you can always come back to it if you mess up your original. The dodge and burn tools are at the bottom of the restoration tools here. Again, just release, click and release over the dodge tool. And dodging makes an image lighter. It works just like a brush tool. You can set which range of values it affects. I'm going to set it to midtones, and I'm actually going to turn the exposure down to about 15% here. Okay, and then I'm just going to paint with it to see what happens. It's kind of lightening the sidewalk. Let's turn up the exposure. There we go. So as I paint, you'll notice all the mid-tone grays here in the sidewalk are getting much lighter. And as I continue to paint, they'll continue to get lighter. They'll only truly ever affect midtones. So if I start to paint on the student here, because this is all shadow, it's not really affecting it all that much. If I change it to shadows, and I really turn up the exposure, it will start to lighten the shadow areas as well. You can notice they're getting lighter as I continue to paint here. Burning is the opposite of dodging. It will make an image darker. So let's say I want to make this shadow area darker. I can set it to midtones or shadows. I can turn up my exposure, and then I can simply paint in that area to darken that. Now the reason you would do this is because it only affects the range of values that you set it to, and it affects it no matter what color it is. So it's not like painting with the paintbrush where you're actually physically adding a color to it. It's just darkening the colors around those pixels. Now the other way to dodge and burn is the non-destructive way. To do this, what you're going to do is you're going to make a new solid fill layer. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. The fastest way is just hold down the Alt key and then click on the new layer button. This prompt will come up, and then what you can do is you can change the blending mode to overlay, which is what's commonly used when making this kind of non-destructive dodge and burn layer. When you do that, it'll prompt you with this special prompt here to fill the overlay with a neutral color, 50% gray. So check mark that box because that's what we want to do. And then we're going to click OK, and we have a perfect solid gray pixel layer that's set to the overlay blending mode. And the overlay blending mode simply, it doesn't really affect the image. If I turn this off and on, you can't really see a difference, can you? What I'm going to do though is I'm going to create a difference by painting on this layer. Let's turn off our original image, which we were dodging and burning. Let's turn on the other. This is the original, the protected copy. And let's do some dodging and burning. The way to do this, instead of using the dodge and burn tools, is to use the brush tool. So I'm going to go to the brush tool, and I'm going to paint with black and white. So switch it to the default black and white. There's a little button for that down by the foreground and background color swatches. And when I paint, you're going to want to make sure that you turn the opacity way down so that it doesn't drastically affect your image. And then, make sure your brush is nice and soft. And as you paint with black or white, you will make areas of your image lighter or darker. So if I paint with black in here, that will darken those shadows. Okay, if I switch to white, I will lighten the sidewalk. Okay, and you'll notice it works kind of just like the dodge and burn. It makes things lighter or darker, subtly though. The benefit of this is that we can actually paint solid gray back into this, and it's non-destructive. It's on a separate layer, so we can always shut it off if we don't like the changes we're making. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you how to do is use the blur filters. I'm going to show you the old-fashioned way of doing it. CS6 actually has some amazing things it does with blurs. So play with the brand new CS6 blur features and read the tutorial. I actually used some screenshots from the CS6 blur tutorials that I was looking at, and it just does some really cool stuff. So try that out on your computers. I'm going to show you the old-fashioned way of doing it with layer masks and such. So if you want to watch this, you can. First things first, you're going to duplicate your layer. So double click on your background to make it a layer. Click and drag it down to the new layer button to copy it. And on this top layer here, we're going to blur it. So to blur it, go to Filter, Blur, and then the best kind of blur, I believe, is the Gaussian blur. Click on that, and then kind of turn it up just a little bit until you see kind of blur that you're looking for, and then click OK. And what we're going to do is we're going to mask out the bottom of this image so that this stays in focus and our background stays blurry. So to do that, just add a layer mask like you would before, and the layer mask button again is down at the bottom of the layer the layer panel. So just click that little button. It's a circle inside a rectangle, and then we're going to paint with black and white using our brush here to mask out this area. So I'm going to paint on the bottom here, and I don't have the opacity high enough. That can actually work in my favor up here as I kind of gently fade that out, and then I will turn it all the way up for down there. There we go. Alright, looking good. Okay, make this even softer. Alright, and so now we got kind of a tilt shift effect. It's not as good as the CS6 blur options, but it does the job, and it creates kind of an artistic effect with the blur.